Welcome back, Mr. Goodberry. The First Star Logistics studio is fully equipped and ready to record.
Welcome to Bengals On The Brain. I'm your host, Joe Goodberry. The show is brought to you, as always, by my partner, First Star Logistics. We're going to do a little something different today. We're going to preview this Bengals-Titans game, but we're going to do it by taking questions and doing so the way I typically do. We try to do this on Thursday nights during Thursday Night Football on Twitter at Joe Goodberry. If you don't follow me there, make sure you do. And if you do, and if you're one of the subscribers, we host a Twitter Spaces where we get in, we talk, we watch Thursday Night Football. We take a lot of questions and bring up a lot of topics about the Bengals, what's currently going on, what has gone on, what we should expect, normal Bengals conversation. But we're going to record it and go through some of those questions I'm going to answer, and I'm going to keep the conversation going and try a little something different this week as we get ready for the Week 4 game versus the Tennessee Titans. Let's check it out. Bengals Titans Week 4. What are we expecting? What are we looking for? The Bengals have beaten the Titans 3 times in a row now, going back to Burrow's rookie year, which was probably that was easy. I think we'd all agree that was the best game Burrow played his rookie season. Remember, those were the makeshift offensive line, right? A bunch of guys playing positions they've never played before. I think Quentin Spain was at right tackle after being signed just a few days ago. Was it left tackle? Either way, he was at tackle, and they didn't give up any sacks. And that was a fun one. And then the 2021, obviously, playoffs, which was an awesome time. Showed they weren't a finesse team. Took it to the Titans, the number 1 seed in the AFC. I think that was the first time I thought they actually had a chance, right? I mean, the Raiders game was like, yeah, they beat them. They're at home. They're a better team. And then that Raiders game happened, and it was like, oh, man, they might be able to do some damage in the AFC if they can beat the Titans. But that was some hype, too, because I always felt like Burrow would outplay Tannehill if a duel happened. And then last year's game, and I think Joe Mixon was out and Jamar Chase was out for that one, and it didn't matter, right? They just threw it up to T. Higgins a bunch. I watched that game recently, actually, and I forgot how close it was at the end somehow. And the Bengals ran the clock out, as they have done so many times, right? When you've got like 6, 7, 8 minutes left, they've done this a bunch. Not this year. They haven't really had that chance, and they couldn't against the Rams on Monday Night Football. Probably something to talk about when they can't get under center and run the ball, right? But that game, they ran it all the way down, ran the clock all the way down, got stopped on 3rd down, and they went to kick a field goal, and the Titans got called for a penalty. I can't remember what it was, if they were over top of the center or tried to leap the center, leap the long snapper, and the Bengals got to keep the ball and just ended up kneeling it and killing out the clock. So if you didn't remember how that game went, that's how that happened. So they were close for the most part, the last 2. With a limited Joe Burrow, what do we expect? Even though he went full in practice. So, I mean, maybe limited's not the right answer. We know he's limited. I know. But he is going full, whatever that means, in practice, because he's clearly not 100%, and he wasn't last week. Not that we were expecting that. We were expecting him to look hobbled. But to be fair, when I watched the tape, a couple of the throws that I live, and if you were watching on TV, you probably saw it, because I watched the TV copy today and the announcers were calling it out. But there was a couple passes that were tipped just ever slightly and made the pass still sort of accurate, still had spin on it, but it was either the one was the Jamar Chase out route on 3rd down. That one was definitely tipped, and it kept it spiral, but it just got like a rainbow arc to it after it hit the guy's helmet or hand. And then there was another one to the tight end over the middle. It might have been Wilcox, where the ball just like flutters to his feet. And I'm like, oh, that was tipped. I didn't notice that until I watched the film. I just thought that Burrow was being irregularly inaccurate. And that wasn't the case. So there was a few clearly where sideline throws where he couldn't torque and twist into it and be as accurate as he would normally be. You can definitely tell he can't plant and rip off that back foot. He's kind of like pulling it with him and almost slingshotting it. For a guy that's got an average arm, we'll see what that effect is. Clearly, they're not having success throwing it deep right now. So it would be nice if defenses would react a little quicker and give them a little bit more one-on-ones on the outside. I mean, that would work towards the Bengals' advantage, and I think they'd still end up coming down with most of those if, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are on top of their game. Jake Lisco, how you doing, buddy?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
I don't know if Joe Burrow can throw the ball downfield right now. I think that's what he was talking about in his presser yesterday, about like needing these practice reps to figure out what's going to work, and missing them, making that hard on him.
Yeah.
Like that deep ball to Jamar might have been a throwaway. I would be surprised if it was a throwaway. I actually thought he got hit as he was throwing it. And then on tape, he doesn't. The ball's gone before
anyone.
His other shoulder, I guess, his left shoulder gets kind of twisted around. He's just really erratic in that range of the field when he has to drive ball. He had one really good throw to Jamar on like a 15-yard out on the short side of the field.
Yes.
And so whatever he did there, he has to channel, I think, for some of these throws that are really floating on him or sailing high in the middle of the field.
I thought about making a cut up of just his lower half, but there was too many throws. Like once I got there, like 12 throws, there was about 5 different releases, or at least it looked that way with his feet. And I was like, yeah, this is just, he's just definitely searching for whatever works right now. Like he's normally mechanically super the same if he can be, right? And here he just was not. At least he's practicing full, because that was my concern when the original re-injury scare happened was, well, if this is a guy that needs reps, and I think that's the conclusion we came to after the summer, right? That, all right, this guy is masterful with being just completely in sync with his offense, with his mechanics, with his timing, with his pocket management, with what he's reading. He needs the reps to do that. And if he doesn't get them, then how much better can he be? And I think if he gets the reps, even while injured in practice, he can overcome it or figure out what works and what doesn't.
That's exactly what he said, is that he needs the time to figure out what's working, what's not working. He needs the reps that he's been missing. Like, he's still way behind on reps. And it's not just like we analyzing, like, yeah, this is a quarterback that needs reps, or like Max Toscana, who's been watching Burrow since he was at LSU, saying, yeah, this is a guy that needs the reps. Like, I think that missing time will affect him. It's Burrow saying it too.
Yeah.
And Burrow has said it, both in his pressers. He said it to Kevin Clark. Kevin Clark has referenced, talking to Burrow about that in the past. So getting the reps is very valuable. And a coach told me the, similar idea. Like, hopefully, if they can get Joe full practice, that'll help.
And there was a couple plays where I thought he could have escaped and maybe took off or extended the play, which you need on 3rd and longs, right? And not just 3rd and longs, but you need those at times, because it looks like they're going to play a shell coverage, not allow anything over the top. And the line was protecting. He just he wanted to roll out to the right on a couple. Good thing Mixon recognized it and peeled off and went out and made himself available. But I thought there was another one where one of the tight ends didn't really peel off and get into a good spot. And then there was another where he just chucked it downfield and threw it away. I think that was the first play of the game. And it looked like they had a 9-8-9 going on, trying to get a shot right away. And I just thought, yeah, maybe that's, and maybe he was as hurting as he's going to be last week, and it'll get better as he goes. But that's how he hurt himself before. I probably feel they probably don't want him moving around too much. The tight end situation was interesting, not seeing Irv Smith out there. I know people are real disappointed in what Irv showed in those first 2 weeks. And Hudson was interesting at the very least. He caught a nice pass up the seam, which is great. And it's something that this offense desperately needs. But I thought that first 3rd down, people were like, well, he got hit in the face mask or hit in the helmet or grabbed by the ear hole, whatever it was. Everyone had something, got hit in the face. Yes, but you expect a more talented, maybe bigger guy to run through that and be okay running through that type of contact, or making the guy miss enough to the point where he doesn't get contacted. And the play should have worked. They got man coverage. He's isolated. If that's Irv Smith, I feel much more confident, and maybe that's hindsight. But it was interesting to watch what they were doing with tight ends, from Drew Sample playing in the backfield. And, I mean, they're out there with no running back on a few plays, and he was basically the up back in protection, because what do they do all the time with that guy in obvious passing situations, and the teams are showing sugar in the A-gap on defense? They walk Travion Williams right up to the line. So you're not running it. So you might as well get the bigger body guy. That seems to be a better blocker in Drew Sample. And he made someone miss on that catch, which I know you love, Jake.
And maybe it was a couple. He had a couple of really good plays as a blocker. Like, he was exceptional as a pass protecting quote unquote back.
Yep.
That being his responsibility. And then if he can make a guy miss on like 1/3 of his catches, which is probably still asking way too much.
That's significantly high. Let's take 1 out of 10, maybe.
Then maybe he's actually their best bet as a 3rd and 8 back with what they have on their team, which is not like a glaring endorsement of Drew Sample or anything. It's more of an endorsement than I've probably ever given Drew Sample, but it's more of an indictment of the running back.
Exactly what I was going to say, because it's not like Travion Williams is some big, strong, or elusive, fast guy, right? So even if he's a decent blocker, man, he's 15 pounds lighter than Samaje Perine was, right? He's not that type of power guy that's just going to catch a dump off and power through and maybe pick up that first down. Not that we've even seen much of Travion Williams to even be sure of it, but like what we have seen so far of him doesn't show that ability. So unless it's Chase Brown or Chris Evans elevating to that role, I agree with you. I think Sample, because he can block so much better, and you're right, if he can do anything as a receiver, it's a bonus. Plus, you may get some looks that the defense really doesn't know how to respond to. And maybe we'll see it as the weeks go on, right? How do defenses say, okay, we know Sample's not going to be much of a threat, or we know he's going to be in the backfield here. So I don't know what the response will be, but let's see what it's going to be over the next couple of weeks. Parker, I see you're in here, buddy. I was just looking at your grades earlier on the offensive line. If you want to touch on any of that, Parker does good work. He grades every offensive lineman, every snap, and comes up with his own system. And I usually check it out every single week. And it's pretty interesting to look at because it doesn't always mesh with what I see, but that's cool with me. And it's not always right in line with like a PFF grade or anything like that. It's more of a percentage base. I'll let Parker Blake talk about it if you want to see. You got your hand up, buddy.
Yeah, no, I came up to be a part of this Sample conversation. You guys hit it all. I just kind of wanted to
touch on Sample then. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to ask first. I appreciate the shout out, and I hope more people disagree with me. Honestly, I would love to have some more conversation about what I'm seeing versus what other people are seeing. Just because I feel like you could have 10 people grade the same game and get 10 different grades. You know, that's just kind of how that goes.
Yeah.
But no, as far as Sample goes, do you think we'll see more of that, or was it like a game plan situational type thing, or just kind of like what do you like? Do you think they'd go back to that at all, or no?
Yeah. But as long as he looks good doing it.
Sorry, Joe. I just wanted to add that because I talked to them about it. The genesis of it was Aaron Donald, and there might be inspiration that this might come back based on how he played.
Then that's what I was going to say. That because he looked good doing it. That maybe, I mean, sometimes you put something in a playbook or in a game plan because it's situational based. And then the guy plays really well and you go, man, maybe we should put this guy in the slot. Maybe we should let this guy rush from inside. Maybe we can, put this running back and let him run more routes, whatever the case may be. Maybe Drew Sample showed that, hey, I can pick this up. I can listen to what Joe Burrow tells me in protection and do my job. Because Mixon had a couple pickups as well, but then he had one other where he just threw a shoulder into a guy. And I was like, ooh, when I saw the tape, I was like, if you could have like laid into him a little bit longer, we might have got a pass up the middle of the field. And, that's kind of the thing with Mixon that we've always had issues with, right? It's just sometimes his attention to detail and intensity can waver as a pass protector. But he did have a couple nice blocks.
I think he just thinks that he's powerful enough to just like deplete a guy. Because like it does work sometimes, but so often he does it and it just doesn't even slow the guy down. It's just that's why it's so inconsistent with him.
He's had highlights going all over on Twitter. Remember that one against the Steelers? What was that, a Monday night or something, where he depleted that guy on like a slant, and everyone's like, "Look, Mixon can pass protect," and it's like, yeah, no, that's not the best example, but he definitely crushed that dude.
That was Mike Hilton. Yeah, it's just not consistent.
That was Mike Hilton. You know what? That was before I knew who Mike Hilton was. I bet.
The Monday night game where he just crushed the dude in Pittsburgh in the pass protection was Mike Hilton.
I wonder if anyone's ever asked Hilton about that now.
I tweeted him about it, and he like retweeted it and said he did me dirty or something like that.
Nice. Drew Garrison, how you doing, buddy? I saw you were at the event with Orlando Brown Jr. How'd that go?
Just another opportunity for me to feel like a very short man. But I mean, the guy's a giant. I look like a child next to him, but it was really, really cool. It was awesome to get to talk to him. I was actually chiming in to ask, and I don't know if you hit on this before I got on, but the run game, I know we have like the lowest run success rate in the league. Do you think any of that stems from having to go shotgun because Burrow just can't go under center right now, and it's just also predictable? Or?
Yeah. I don't.
Before you answer that, I want to tag on. Do you think the pistol makes it more effective, or do you not think it changes anything?
So, okay, yeah. So I do think the effectiveness of the run game gets hindered the more they use it because you can't run as many things out of shotgun. You don't have as much variation. The wide zone doesn't really work, and that leads right into the pistol question because that's really gives you the best chance to try and run it. And then we got like that naked boot off of it, which created a big explosive play to Jamar Chase down the sideline. So that was great. But it's more of like the angle for the running back. You get him behind him so he can actually read that first outside block, that defensive end. I do think they run well early in games and they just don't stick with it because I don't think they want to get through all of their plays so quickly, because it feels like they're only using half of their run game playbook because Burrow's in the shotgun and they're trying to protect them, which I did touch on the episode on Wednesday this week, and they've talked about this, I think, since then, and people have talked about this, but it's what I believe the whole time was what they didn't want Burrow under center right now because, I mean, especially in wide zone runs, you got to get out from under center and you have to sprint to the running back to get him the ball. So it's not like if he can't do that right now or you don't want him to do that even 10 times a game, it's just not worth it. So, yeah, I think they're pretty limited in what they can do, and they see a lot of these short passes and screens and RPOs as an extension of the run game. So I think that's how they view it. Yeah, he's going to drop back 50 times, but if 10 to 12 of them are quick passes, then that's kind of like their balance.
I'm actually shocked we haven't seen counter because they were spamming counter in the preseason.
Yeah.
It seemed like a real point of emphasis.
And we haven't seen it at all.
And they were doing it.
Shotgun wide zone instead. Anyway, sorry.
Have they had a successful shotgun wide zone run? One for 5 yards, maybe?
I was going to say, I think they had one for 5 or 6. And they had that one that Chase Brown's first carry of his career could have been a successful wide zone, but he cut it up.
Yep. And
the other question was, does pistol help?
It's supposed to.
And empirically, so far it has not helped. I know they have the explosive off pistol, but their runs out of pistol have not been good.
It was interesting that final drive, right? Because that final drive, they're running the ball. They've got to waste some clock, right? And the Rams know it as well. And they go in pistol all 3 times, I believe, and try to run some wide zone stuff. And it kind of skews the data a little bit right now because the Rams knew it was coming, and they're still not a great run blocking team. Yeah, but they only did it a couple times so far.
Right.
I was going to say in terms of running power, it seemed like the counter going to the right was, like you said, they spammed it all summer. But now their power's all going to the left, pulling Kappa to the left, and I thought they were good at it. I mean, the touchdown run, Orlando Brown gets to the second level, and then he doesn't even really like crush the guy. I've been saying this to my son too, because he's been climbing the second level a lot in school football. And I'm like, you keep trying to crush the linebacker. Just get to him and get in his way. He's half your size. And then I showed him the Orlando Brown play because Brown barely gets into him, but he completely eclipses him, and Mixon cuts behind him. And the linebacker, I think, just completely loses track of Mixon because he can't see him. Can't see the guy's huge. But it was a really good timing for Brown to get up to the second level.
Yeah, they did run. So the interesting thing is they're only running G power. They're running GT power, G power in the preseason. They're running, or maybe it was counter. They're also running GT counter in preseason out of the gun.
Yeah.
And I bet you that's the next thing we see.
Well, they did hit the one, and we talked about this a little bit, me and Mike, but they hit the one power with Jonah Williams, and I honestly think that was purely because Aaron Donald was lined up on top of Kappa. I think they just switched it over to Williams. I don't think it was called that way. But that play was it wasn't as effective as the guard power stuff was. I just wonder if they're just not getting the look they like out of the tackles getting around.
Parker, that's a good point because you don't want to pull that guard. That's where Donald's over top of him, because he might actually beat that down block. You know what I mean? He might actually get into the backfield.
He did.
That's what we were talking about. We think it was just a check away from. It was probably guard power, but they just switched to the tackle just to make sure we can man up to Donald. But tackle power is a hard play, and I don't know if they have. I think they like bringing Kappa around to the left side just so they can bring all the biggest bodies they have to the point of attack. But I don't know. I want to see more counter, and I don't disagree. I think that is what we see next. I do want to see a lot less of this. Just the wide zone stuff kills me. They run so much of it right now.
Yeah, I actually did not watch the final few plays. I just didn't want to watch the Rams teeing off on the offense when they definitely couldn't move or didn't have enough guys to move them.
Anyway, I think Tanner Hudson. I mean, in the offseason, in the preseason, I thought he should have been on the 53.
Yeah.
I think that he can play. Especially if they're doing this rotation stuff. Joe Burrow still is at least mostly blind to Mitchell Wilcox when he's on the field.
Yeah, we talked about that. That the way he just overlooked him the one time, and then directly the next game, he's like, "Yeah, I'll go to Tanner Hudson on third down on the first third down of the game."
He did throw to Mitch once.
He did. Yep.
But he also overlooked him another time when he was open. He still just doesn't consider. It's funny.
You want Tanner Hudson over Wilcox, right? Like I do.
I don't think that Wilcox. So the way that I saw it in the preseason was, I agreed with James on this. Hudson is the Irv Smith number 2.
Yep.
And Wilcox is the sample number 2.
Yeah. Even though I think Zach Gentry could be a nice number 2 sample.
Yeah, so with only carrying 3 guys, do you think they consistently work towards having a blocker, a receiver, and then a tweener, or do you think they start leaning towards having 2 more receiving style tight ends moving forward, and more towards getting to that more athletic 12 personnel look in the future?
I think if Hudson, because I thought he played well overall. So if he, again, like the sample, if his role expands, maybe you want to get a 4th guy on this roster somehow. And Hudson looked good, and maybe you can use him. Maybe you can get him into the rotation a little bit more, especially because Irv hasn't done much, and you probably want to limit Irv's snaps. So, yeah, I think right now Hudson could be called up at any point, and maybe you expend or you spend those call-ups, and then you actually sign them to the roster. But yeah, I could see them continuing to do this. Like we'd be having a fire Zach Taylor, Frank Pollock campaign if they allowed, because we've seen backup offensive linemen play for this team the last 5 years easily, but in the major seasons of the last 2 years, the Bengals rarely let those guys just go one-on-one. And if they did, it was just because, the scheme, the defense is showing 6 guys and you only got 6 blockers. You got to do what you got to do. But they just straight up said, yeah, you just block Trey Hendrickson one-on-one. And Hendrickson just murdered him. Just absolutely. He did what he was supposed to do.
They kept doing it after he had, even his 4th sack. He 3 sacks.
Yeah.
And they kept doing it. It was wild. I guess I didn't look that closely. I don't think it was anything the Bengals were doing to get them singled out.
No. And I actually looked at this. Crazy. I looked at PFF after week 3 because I wanted to see pass rush productivity overall, pass rush win rate, which Trey Hendrickson's in the top 5. But then I wanted to see, okay, how many of these top 10, 12, 15 guys, how far down the list can I go? That was the premise I'm starting with, and ended up being very deep. But how many of these guys only play right edge, right? And do not move from that spot. And it's really just Hendrickson and one other guy that I don't remember that's further. He was number 26 on the list of pass rush win rate, but it was just Hendrickson up there. They are not moving him around. You look at Myles Garrett and yeah, he moves all around. They're doing all this crazy stuff. Micah Parsons doing all this crazy stuff from the right spot though. Man, Hendrickson is just going against these left tackles every single time.
I feel like that's Trey more than anything else, right?
Yeah, maybe. We didn't get to see Osai much in this game. So I don't know what the Bengals aren't very versatile on the front. The defensive line. Yeah, they'll do different techniques and looks and variations, but they're not moving guys around to different positions. They play where they play, and that's it. Yeah. Right.
Zach will move, Osai will move.
And Murphy.
Murphy will move, but they won't. Yeah, Hubbard moves.
Just differently.
Not ever to right end.
Yeah.
But he does move.
Yeah, they'll let Hubbard play middle linebacker. They'll put him at D tackle once in a while. I almost out of necessity sometimes. I highlighted one of those plays against the Ravens where he kind of had to because they were stuck in a nickel defense with only one D tackle on the field, so he kicked inside. But yeah, it was good to see all those guys finally get a little bit of production. People were really hard on the defense, I think, after the first 2 weeks. But those are the two type of defenses or two type of offenses, the Browns and the Ravens, where if you don't have a lead on them, they make it incredibly hard on you because they stick to the run, they stick to play action, move in the pocket. They do a lot of stuff up front, especially the Ravens with slow down your pass rush with the guys in motion and snapping it right when they're in front of your DNs. And it was nice to see that the Bengals had a little bit of a lead and the defense can pin their ears back and go. It reminded you of why they're paying this D-line as much as they are. And yeah, they could be better still at times. I want them to take over even when, because I saw this, someone saying, I can't remember who it was during the Browns Steelers game. Yeah, it had to be because it was Watt and Garrett, and Garrett's winning on every single play. And Watt is, doing his thing as he always was and had big splash plays. And I saw someone tweet out, man, I wish the Bengals had like an A1 stud defensive end or pass rusher. And I was like, yeah, me too. And then seeing Hendrickson just win like he did on Monday night, I was like, man, when he's on, he is on.
And this isn't like a knock to the guy, but I just wanted to know how much production was Hendrickson generating against the starting left tackle opposed to getting so isolated on the backup? Like, was he productive early too, or was it just when they put the backup guy in there and let him alone?
I thought he was fine versus the starter, but it wasn't very long before he came out. What was that, second quarter?
Yeah, I think it was pretty easy in the first half still.
Yeah, and
it's also a bad starter.
Yeah,
Derek Jackson is not good.
But as a run defender, man, I don't know if it's, and I don't think it's the scheme because I remember this from when he was with New Orleans. He just sometimes looks like he's pass rushing on a run play, right? And he's just running that arc and leaving a wide open cutback lane. And when the Rams were just not running the ball at all towards the second half, when the Bengals were up by 2 scores, his get off at that point, like he is dialed in 100% on the pass, and they just could not touch him. It was one of those performances where we're going to be like, yeah, man, Trey Hendrickson. Without that defense looks so much worse without him. Drew, I see you got your hand up, man.
Yeah, I was going to say pretty much exactly what Jake just said. If we can get them out of the run game on Sunday, Dillard's given up the most sacks in the league, I think, with 6, so Hendrickson can just tee off. But there's also something about Hendrickson that just seems like when the lights are on and it's prime time, he just plays he just plays better under the lights, it feels like. So, excuse me, I'm expecting a big one from him this week if the Bengals can tighten up the run defense and keep Henry from kind of controlling the game.
Mike, I see you got your hand up, man. You gonna want to change the subject? Or you got something to add?
Yeah, I just had a kind of question. I keep hearing the national pundits talk about the Titans' run game, but are we sure they just looks like they've lost Derrick Henry's lost a step. Looks like Tajay Spears isn't the guy I thought he was out of the draft, at least so far. Is their offense even a threat to us at all? They seem awful.
You know what I think it is they don't have the weapons at receiver anymore at all. And so when you go back 3 years ago, even 2 years ago, when they had the number 1 seed, and they have AJ Brown, and it's that run game, Henry plus AJ Brown, that's tough because Tannehill was even producing at 100 quarterback rating in his play action game. Everything was working for them. And now I think the veil is completely gone from the passing offense where it's yeah, we're not worried about it at all. We're not really worried about these weapons. They really don't have the speed. And Tannehill doesn't look as good as he used to. So defenses aren't respecting that at all. And they're just selling out on the run. And that makes it hard for Henry, I think, who is super athletic for a big dude, but at the same time, he still has build-up speed and needs a little bit of space to get to it. And when guys are crashing at the line and beating up on this poor offensive line for the Titans, it just makes everything harder. But I do think Tyjae Spears has flashed enough to at least be aware of him and his ability. He's getting a lot of snaps right now.
But even compared to last year, I think the receiver core is easily better than it was last year. It just looks like Henry's even worse compared to that, though.
The offensive line is much worse.
Yeah.
True. Skaronski is not playing and was very good in the game he played and is still not practicing this week. But, if he's well enough, they'll probably try to get him out there because Radins next to Dillard is about as bad as any left side in the NFL right now.
Yeah, but also the Titans, the receiving core might be better, but it's not faster. I mean, that's such a big thing. We see speed right now. Well, who's got the top offense in the league, right? And they're just dripping with speed, the Miami Dolphins. And you just look at the Titans offense, and that's
no speed.
Right. That's a slow offense.
Chigakonkwo.
Yep.
And Derrick Henry after 10 yards.
Right. Derrick Henry, once he's got room to build up his speed, but yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's slow.
Point is, we're not going to see that 5-corner look this week.
No.
From the Bengals.
Which actually I thought was awesome. The 5-corner look. Because last year they did go out there with 7 DBs, but it was 4 safeties and 3 corners. This year, 5 corners and 2 safeties. With Hilton playing safety, in the safety position. But I thought was really interesting and indicative. Their corners are good. We thought this coming into the year, and the Bengals think Jalen Davis is good, and he made a play, and it's really showed that they are strong at corner.
Yeah, he's real good, DJ Turner. We're probably
I know.
not talking enough about how
we are not.
DJ Turner's playing, and no one's noticing it because he's not getting picked on, and he's not giving up catches.
And he's playing the left, the right, the slot. I mean, he's matching up against Zay Flowers and these fast guys they're worried about. It's like they're specifically using him to get in there, and you're right. He is sticky, man. I like to pause the all 22, and I mentioned it a couple times on the show, but I'll pause it at the point where the quarterback hits his last foot, and then when he steps up, and DJ Turner is in the receiver's hip pocket, and even when he gets off balance, he flips his hips, gets his feet reset, and he closes in a flash. That's exactly what you want the guy to look like, and the way his ball skills look during the summer, man, I'm excited about. I think as a whole, the Bengals are probably super excited with the way DJ Turner, Cam Taylor-Britt, and Dax Hill have played so far.
Thank you so much for giving DJ Turner his props. I don't know if you remember, Joe, at the first Star Draft Party, I was singing his praises moments after the pick, and I'm so glad to see that you guys see it because I watched his whole career as a Michigan fan, and it's just so good to see.
You kind of just need T. Higgins to have a good game, and I feel like it's probably at the point where they want to feed him. They definitely made a concerted effort to get the ball to Jamar Chase last week. It feels like get back to Higgins and get him on the right track as well.
They did try to force the ball to T. Just it never worked for whatever reason, for one reason or another. Either Joe missed or T dropped it or T pushed off, whatever it was. But they did try. I remember one thing I wanted to talk about. It's on the topic of receivers. But yeah, T just needs to play better. I think Tyler Boyd needs to play better.
I agree.
He at least made some plays in that game,
but he also, the 2 plays he didn't make, Tyler Boyd should have come back on both of those, I thought he wasn't aggressive enough at the catch point on either.
And they're just nobody's getting open. For all the criticism about the Bengals not scheming guys open, the guys that got open in that game were schemed open.
Yep. Agreed completely.
That's overgeneralizing for sure. But generally speaking, it was Jamar Chase could be one-on-ones by himself and also was schemed open. And if anyone else was open, it was because of the structure. Yep. It wasn't because they were winning their one-on-ones.
And it's funny because, this for the crowd that Joe Burrow gets carried by his receivers, right? You can just throw it up and they're going to make plays. When Burrow's not 100%, quickly, I started to go, man, Higgins just doesn't look right out there. Now that could be a whole separate issue, but those little bit differences in ball placement on these deep passes, and now Higgins can't come down with them, or it's just they don't seem like they're on the same page. And then also this year through the first 3 games, I'm like, man, maybe Tyler Boyd has lost a step. He just doesn't look as quick as he used to. And maybe the difference is Joe Burrow, and it's just that he's not 100%.
I've also had that thought that Tyler Boyd might have lost a step, though.
Okay.
So you're not alone on that one. Maybe not. He's never been like a burner.
Right.
So
but we also have seen that with guys that aren't burners, that sometimes that cliff starts to happen at 28 rather than 30 because it's more noticeable.
Yeah, it could be. I don't know. I'm not really too worried about it yet. It's just something I'm kind of watching, you know?
Yeah. And that's where we'll end the space for today, talking about the Titans, previewing that game, some of the issues with the Bengals offense, some of the things they're doing well, some of our concerns, and some of our predictions going forward for the rest of the year. I'd like to thank Jake Lisco and Drew Garrison and Parker Blake for coming out and helping me host that Spaces on Twitter. We ended up going for about another hour. We're not going to put that whole thing up here. We got a little goofy and crazy and had fun watching the Lions take it to the Packers on Thursday Night Football. But before you go, make sure you get in on the First Star giveaway this week. They gave away 2 PlayStations last week. This week, it's the Championship WWE Bengals belt, which is pretty awesome. Your chances of winning this are way higher than a normal contest, guys. I'm talking, you got to watch the show. You got to like, subscribe. You do all these things. Follow on Twitter. You're one of just a few thousand people that are going to watch this and do all that. And those odds are pretty good. So get in, get with First Star, join the contest. This has been Bengals on the Brain, and I'm your host, Joe Goodberry. Give me the Bengals this week in Tennessee, 24-20. We get the win. Go to 2-2.
Dave Lapham here, and every day I am grateful for my experience to have played professional football. As a player, I realized self-motivation, leadership, and appreciating your teammates are key. At First Star Logistics, you can use those same attributes to create the life you want for you and your family. Build your future by working hard like I did. You'll see results both on and off the field. Call First Star Logistics today and be part of our winning team.
Opportunity knocking.